you. We're gonna, I think, go down the line so that it's the easiest here. But my first question is like, what was your introduction to Xmen? Was it from your audition and then you were like, oh, what is this? Let me get involved and see what this is. What was your first kind of exposure to Xmen?
The audition. Did not have a clue. I think they called it, was it Project X at that point? And some of us were savvy enough to know what was going on, and people like me were going, I don't have a clue, who is this? What's a mutant? And you know, I tell this story because they were trying to feed me whatever adjectives and nouns they could. So then they must have looked at my face and I was just like, okay, sure. And then, of course, finally, they said the word queen, and you know, it's like, yeah, I can do that. Woo! This is good.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Well, I'm shocked right now that there's this many people here because people keep coming up to the table saying, we didn't even know you were here.
Gumbo, get on with it.
So, I am shocked because, and we should be here, because this show is a smash hit again. And I think it was just a real privilege to be asked to be a part of this year. I haven't done personally a Comic-Con since 1996 here in Toronto. Wow. And it was a room like this for people that were fans of Kung Fu. And I was doing Xmen at the same time, but it hadn't happened yet for the Xmen. And here you all are, all these years later, some new fans, some old. But what was the question about auditioning?
We can talk about auditioning too, but my question was, what was your first exposure to Xmen? Were you already like a fan of the comics when you came into it, or was it something new for you?
I didn't know a thing, and to this day, it's the only voice work I've ever done. I've done a lot of, over the years, TV commercials and so on, but that's for my voice, like for Lotto 649, things like that. But this, no, really, that was a good gig. But the Xmen was my first exposure to it, and from what I understand, many of the people that were cast had come from different mediums in entertainment, television, film, all of the above, Stratford and theater and amateur theater and so on, but none were really seasoned voice actors, and I think that was a big part of the success of the casting, because they brought a certain type of actor to the table.
Yeah, when we first were doing the casting of the original X-Men back in the 90s, there was a recording of the show that was done really bad, and we had to not use it, and we had to go back and recast and use actors we didn't want cartoon voices, you know, like Scooby-Doo and all that stuff. We wanted people who had a range, who did theatrical training, who could really had a range using their voice. And that's how that was our criteria for recasting and getting this amazing cast for the original series. And, you know, they brought the characters to life, you know, Storm, and Gambit, Mystique, you know, everybody over there. Yeah, one of the things that's, well, Cal can tell it better, but Cal and Lenore never wanted to do the voice, right? You remember?
You talking to me? Yeah. What do you mean I didn't want to do the voice? I didn't know what it was. I fell into this.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's literally, I had never done a voiceover in my life, and I've been, this is the first time I've talked to like Canadian Toronto stuff. Not where I grew up. I worked over a little town in Lake Erie. I came to Toronto. Yeah, came to Toronto in 1972, and closed off the CBC's 20th anniversary. I sang a song because that's what I was known for. Then I did sang jingles forever. commercials and stuff. 2 scoops of raisins in the back. Come on, raisins, man. All that stuff. And whatever. And when I got the call for the X-Men, because I had never read the comic book, didn't know who Wolverine was from Gambit. And walked in and the girl that called me, Karen Gora, she said, would you like to audition for a cartoon? And I said, sure, that'd be great. And I said, what do I have to sing? And she said, oh no, you won't be singing. I said, well, sure. So I went to the thing blind, and I was going to say blind and deaf, but thanks for asking them what the question was. And I walked in and I said, so what am I doing? And they said, you're auditioning for Wolverine. I said, Wolverine? I'm going to shorten the story. and there's a line here that I'm reading, and I don't know who I'm talking to, but who is it that I'm talking to? And they said, oh, that's Sabretooth. And I'm serious. I mean, sitting there, this stupid singer, Sabretooth, Wolverine. Is this an animal cartoon? And they laughed like you, and they said, no. Like, they wanted to say stupid, but no. I said, well, what then? Wolverine's like the toughest animal in northern Canada for pound, and Sabretooth, obviously a tiger or something. They said, no. I love this. They're mutants. This is the look of my face. What the hell's a mutant? And they just had to describe the whole thing. And they said, so are you, I said, who do you hear him sound like? And they went, Clint Eastwood. And I thought, shit. Clint Eastwood is he almost whispers everything, and I've never heard him yell. And this line that I was telling you about, I said, he's got to be yelling at this person. And I've never heard Clint Eastwood yell. It's always, go ahead, punk, that kind of stuff. And they said, well, you're right. I said, are you ready to read? Like they're getting bored. You ready to read? I said, sure. And it just came out, and I swear to God, I didn't think of anything. The line came out. Oh, then they showed me a picture of him. I said, you should have started with that. Showed me a picture of him. And so I said, well, this is the line, and I didn't know the context because, there was no show yet. But when I did see it, it made me laugh because it's when Jubilee goes up to set Sabretooth loose from the hospital bed in the mansion, and lets his cuffs on his wrists up. And immediately when he gets loose, he throws her across the floor at Wolverine's feet. You don't do that. Because he loved Jubilee. And he just said, all right, you egg-sucking piece of gutter trash. You always like pushing around people shorter than you. Well, I'm shorter. Try pushing me. And then there's all 4 or 5 of them. There was Larry and like about 6 all from New York and LA. And it was just kind of the expression was like, holy shit. Give more lines to read. So I read for the next 15 minutes, went home, and the next day, I love the way they say, when they say this, you're finished. They said, thanks, Gal, we'll be in touch. Anyway, get it. Anyway, they called me in a couple of days at home and said, we would love to have you as our Wolverine. And I said, and I would love to be your Wolverine, whoever and whatever he is. And here we are, and I'm telling you that story to Canadians. Oh yeah, plus I had that was a silly show, it was a great show at the time, 78 to 83, a show called Circus, with myself and Charisse Lawrence. It was kind of like Donnie and Marie Osmond. Yeah, and then I toured with Joe Cocker, as I was telling this right here, for a while with a band that we put together called Deja Vu. So everything's been music except for this guy. And now they ask me what you want to do with the rest. What do you see for a future for X-Men? I said, well, I'm looking forward to X-Men the musical. Anyway, goodbye.
Randall, can you top that story with your kind of origin?
Do we have any time left?
We can make time.
Well, first of all, I want to say this is the first time I've been to a Comic-Con. And so I'm really excited to see everybody, and especially all the people with their memories, their childhood memories. That's really important because I'm a big family person, and I feel like we're all one big family. I auditioned, and I really had just done a lot of television voiceovers commercials in Toronto, and was always the smooth, trying to lure people to buy something, you know, let's face it. And when I heard about this and went into the audition, I really just wanted to really be in charge. You know, I wanted to be the bad guy, because I kind of like bad girls. I like somebody that, a character that plans, is manipulative, thinks about things in relative terms, really, to her own character. What, you know, how's this going to work out for me? And Mystique right away spoke to me, and the producers liked what I was doing, so here I am. Is that too short?
We'll talk.
Yep, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Professor?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure, I'd love to play a mutant. I said, when they asked me about a show they were doing about mutants. And then they said, you're not a mutant. You are directing things. How do I, because I got into doing voice work in this country by just trying to sound like Don Franks as much as I could. Because in Canada we have a tremendous history of voice work. And I believe the very first school for voice work in Toronto was opened by Lorne Greene, who began all his work, well, being the voice of doom during World War II on CBC radio. And CBC is the big reason why we have so many fantastic voice actors in this country, because all of those guys, the early Stratford people, they worked at CBC, and voice, that's all you have. And you just get used to a different kind of work. You become comfortable with that. And when it came to, I'm trying to figure out, well, how do I make Professor X sound something different? Like, he's the one who's really supposed to know what's going on. How do I fake that? Because I don't know anything that's going on. And it was William Hutt who first told me that, you know, most important thing about acting was the truth. And once you learn how to fake that, everything is works perfectly. And so and to do that, wow, and to be with, because it's also very interesting, and we're all together now in a way that we weren't that often, because in voice work you kind of go in although George, you were telling me actually we started out with more of a group around microphones. But quite often we would be coming in, we'd see each other in the waiting room while each person was going in and doing an hour or so. But no, it's amazing to look back and see all of those wonderful voices in this and how much they reached out to people, because it is kind of like radio. Even though it was a cartoon, it's that voice thing, and I grew up on that. My first radio experiences as a kid were listening to, in England, where I grew up, my uncle, who wasn't that much older than me, had a little crystal radio set hooked up, and I listened to it with earphones that were from the rear gunner of a Lancaster bomber. And I'm a war baby. I was born in that, and I got to listen. So, yeah, all of that stuff just turned me on big time.
That is incredible.
And I never got over it, as you can tell.
My first exposure to Xmen was 1963, Xmen #1. And that got me hooked on comic books and on Xmen, so that when I got the sides to read for this Project X, I went, Project X my ass. This is Xmen. And I had goosebumps like I do now, thinking that I'm going to get a chance possibly to play a character from something that meant a lot to me as a kid. And it happened, and again, here we are. So, and thank you to all of you for making our careers and to making Xmen part of our legacy, because without you, we wouldn't be sitting on this stage, I wouldn't be Beast, Cedric wouldn't be Professor, none of us would be here. So kudos to all of you.
George, I would love to follow up on what you just said there, and I'm curious, what has it meant for you to have had that childhood experience with Xmen, to then be at these conventions and hear how you had an impact on the childhoods of others? And that's a question that can come down the line too, but I would love to start with you on this one.
Absolutely, that's one of the most moving things that an actor could ever hear, that his meager little performance affected somebody's life so deeply that they can find the time to come back and tell you about it. And the fact that we've also heard that so many people were at the end of their rope, and that this show was their escape, their last grasp, and that if it weren't for the show, some of you might not even be here. And this is something that affects us deeply, because ultimately we were doing a cartoon, and it was just part of one of many, many different things that all of us did. And you never know what is going to be your legacy, what people are going to remember you for. And it's very touching that this is the show, and that it means so much to all of you, and that we had a part in that. So again, thank you from the bottom of our hearts.
Look at them, they're all infected. They're all infected. Oh, they're look at the infection in this room. Great. Yeah.
Larry, I would like to follow up with you and kind of ask, what do you think it was about this cast that you put together that really had the secret sauce? You guys were really cooking something in that original animated series. What do you think it was about the team that you put together?
Like I was saying earlier, I think what made the show work was that we picked actors with tremendous abilities and talent to bring life to these characters that I grew up with. It's like George, I grew up in, I think about Xmen number 5 or 6, so I was way back when, and it just pulled me right in. But, the cast that we've cast here, I think they've imprinted on 2 generations as to what Storm sounds like, what Gambit sounds like, what Mystique sounds like, Wolverine, Professor X, Beast. These actors are like, we auditioned lots of them, but these are the best of the best. And I think between them and also having really good writers who knew how to write good character dramas, I call it lightning in a bottle, because it all came together having good scripts, excellent actors, and I was able to direct the shows to maximize the look of the show, and also to make sure that the show stayed within the mythology of the books we all grew up with. So I wanted to make sure that the shows were like a living comic book for everybody to see and enjoy. And when I was working on the show, I always tried to channel my inner kid, and I did the show when I was in my 30s, and I was like, okay, I tried to go back and say, okay, what would I like if I was 12? Oh, you can do this, oh, you can do that. I make sure to put certain things into the show to make sure it was fun for the inner child in me, and I was hoping that it would translate to you guys, that you guys would enjoy the show. And thank God you guys were there. Because nobody wanted the Xmen back in the 90s. All the networks turned it down.
Wow.
And because of one woman, her name is Margaret Lesh. I used to work with her and Stan Lee. When she became the CEO of Fox Kids, she's the one who called me up and said, Larry, we're doing the Xmen. And that's where I got my shot.
My next question for the group, and we will start with you, Allison, is there a specific scene that you remember recording that kind of unlocked something for you about Storm, as we go down the line, about Gambit, about Mystique, as we go down this line, but a moment that you just kind of remember seeing something new about the character?
This is a story that I tell sometimes, but it wasn't while I was recording it. It was actually after And a good few years after, before I did Xmen '97, so it was some knowledge that I brought with me into this new incarnation of the show. I always forget the name of the damn episode. I think it's Savage Land, Savage Heart, which is the one, I think Sauron is manipulating her mind or something, and she goes absolutely nuts, and she's destroying stuff. Girlfriends want to tear. And you expect that the storm that we have come to know at the end of it would be hugely apologetic. I am so sorry. I don't know what happened. I will make sure that it never happens again. But that's not what Girlfriend says. What she said is that after all these years of holding, stuck in, I'm not quoting, I can't remember the line, but to finally be able to let go and release, never have I felt so free. And I went, whoa! I just learned something about this woman, about how much it takes to control what I imagine is her rage against the injustices of this world. And she can't always release it. If she did, she'd drown the world. And so I have held on to that little kernel, and I believe it now informs everything that I do. This idea of having to hold on so tight all the time, and the pure joy that there is of finding a family and being able to let go. So.
For you, was there a moment that kind of something unlocked for you in terms of who Gambit was?
Well, I think Larry just said something that connected with me about connecting with his inner child. At that time of my life, I was working so hard every day, fighting bad guys on a show called Kung Fu: The Legend Continues with David Carey.
Yes.
Well, I think the point is that I don't know that I took the X-Men all that seriously, because Kung Fu took 12, 14 hours a day. And every show I've done beyond that has taken the same amount of time. And X-Men would take me a lunch hour. And I'd come in and I'd meet some of the funniest people I met in cast members that were just kind of joking around, and they could do impersonations, and they all cracked me up. And I thought, this is really fun. But I think the part that I connected with was that I understood that character from the moment that I read the first lines. My struggle was always trying to get that accent down that we were making up as we went. Nobody knew how a Cajun accent was supposed to sound. I don't care what these guys say. I would do a take, they'd say, what do you think? And they'd say, let's try another one, maybe say, and it would be worse, their suggestion. We'd do it, and finally we'd hack our way through it. But the point is that I understood the character, and that inner child was, I know what I would want to see if I was a young person watching this. I know the guy, I know this guy. And a big part of it was love for him. Wanting to be loved, trying to love where he was from, and the people that were not good people, but he still wanted to love them. They were his family. I'm talking about, the bayou. And then falling in love with a woman you can't touch, not the best choice. And I think that was all. For me, the connection was made from the beginning. And I think it thank goodness, because it's stuck. And to be honest, it doesn't matter who plays Gambit anymore. I nailed it from the beginning for all of you. We're good to go. And I love playing cable. I thought Lawrence Payne did a great job creating that character, so hats off to Lawrence, and I'm happy to be doing him today.
You were fantastic as Gabriel, I just have to say. Moving on down the line, Randall, I mean, for you, what was a moment that like Mystique started to kind of like resonate for you?
I remember Rogue's story having the most effect on me because there's nothing greater than a mother's love. And we all know our mothers want the best for us, but don't necessarily stay out of things when they should. And Mystique's always trying her best and thinks she's always doing the right thing. And she gets herself into some really, as you know, crazy scenes. And with Rogue, you know, she's such a unique character, and Mystique she just can't seem to control her and where she's going, and she thinks she knows what's best for her. So that mother love that Mystique has, as much as she is a meddling, manipulative, she can do some bad things. She starts out with the right idea, you know, and sometimes it just overwhelms her. But mother's love and family love, because at the end of the day, that's, I think, is the most important thing, is family.
Well, you know what they say, bad girls have the most fun. And then how for you? I mean, what was a moment with Wolverine that you kind of realized something new about him beyond that, you know, he wasn't just an animal Wolverine, he was a mutant with, you know, powers and so much struggle.
I learned a lot about him in the episode called Cold Vengeance. When Jean wouldn't kiss him, and then that whole main thing that he goes in and, you know, she, of course, conveniently says, just as their lips are this far apart, she says, I have to go, Cyclops needs me. And his heart's broken. You know, and all he says is, so do I, as she walks away. And he goes out, gets into his car to Jeep, and he's going to head up north to the Arctic. Looks over, of course, sees Cyclops' car. So he's still upset, runs over, pops the claws, and says, cowards, all of them, and rips the roof right off Cyclops' car. And I'm thinking, I would have done the same thing. And he didn't know Jean had followed him, and she said, Wolverine, like, you idiot, what are you? And he just turned to her, and I always loved his sense of humor. He didn't even know he was being funny half the time. He just turned to her and said, tell Cyclops, I made him a convertible. He goes out and he heads up, and God love him, he's all by himself, where he loves to be in the snow up to his knees. He loves the skiing, he loves the natives, and he's all by himself at this moment in the episode. And he just stops and he smells and he just goes, Sabretooth. I can smell him. Because he's up there to get away from everything. I can smell him. There's no peace for me, even here. He's so lonely, the guy. And he just wants to be free and have someone love him. And he can't even do that up, you know, in the Arctic. There's wingnuts there, and he ends up having to fight him and save all the people in the village. And then the village is they're celebrating because Wolverine has saved them. And he's sitting outside of the tent with the chief, and the chief says, the people are very happy, and it's all because of you. And he said, and Wolverine says, I'm happy too. I don't understand. I feel at peace. And he said, no man can have peace in his heart until he really knows and understands why he's here. And Wolverine said, I wish I could tell you. Because he didn't know he was a mutant or any of that stuff. I wish I could tell you. And the chief said, when the time comes, you will speak, my friend. And Wolverine heard those magic words to him. He just said, you called me friend. And that was the end of the episode. And that just broke my heart. It was like, this poor guy, for God's sakes. He can't keep women. He can't keep enemies even. It's just, he's like a constant battle for love and to someone just to need him and stuff. And I can dig it. So that's all. Thanks for bringing that up.
And then Cedric, for you know, what was something with Professor X that like clicked for you and you understood him in a new way?
Jeez, I was amazed you you're quoting all these.
Oh, try and keep up, Professor.
I know, I feel like Cal needs to do like a one-man show reading an episode.
Yeah.
Have you ever thought of getting rid of the chair?
No, diverting from that though, I'm just thinking, because I've been looking here for a fellow who I signed something for here a couple of hours ago, and he told me, he expressed that when he was young, it was the first time in watching the Xmen that because he had been feeling like he didn't belong, and you know, you get bullied when you're very young. If bullying doesn't kind of put something that happens to when you get old and get in the workforce. It happens very early on. And that he watched that show and that the feeling that there were other people who were in his position, that there were mutant feelings that people can have of not belonging and not being part of something. And that was his first awakening, that this was a kind of a situation that wasn't all about him, that everybody goes through, you know, feelings of being alien, of being, and that this show really put it together and did it for people internationally. And the kind of feedback that I had letters early on when people were saying, you know, I had a woman who was a PhD in Miami saying that my voice saved her life because, I don't know, she heard it. She wasn't even watching the TV. She heard the voice from in the next room saying something while she was deeply depressed and in the couch. And that voice reached out to her and suddenly a piece of the world made sense. I mean, I just thought it was a cartoon. I had no idea. We were dealing with these huge forces of the psyche and of society, etc. So,
Oh, this was no cartoon. This is an animated series.
Yeah,
That's all. That's not that good.
As we all know.
And then George, for you, I mean, what was an episode that like really resonated with you, with Hank?
Beauty and the Beast. Up until this time, Hank was always just the cold, calculated scientist and the proponent of the movement for coexistence between humankind and mutants. And then all of a sudden, he falls in love. And he becomes more human than mutant. And the scene where he's sitting in front of the fireplace looking at the family album and his progression into mutancy and bemoaning the fact of why this had happened to him. Why couldn't he be normal? Why couldn't he fit in? Why did he have to be different? And then at the very, very bottom of his depression, he takes the entire photo album and flings it into the fire and breaks down in tears. And this was the moment where McCoy left that clinical coldness that he always played, and the calculated scientist. And suddenly he was reduced to nothing more than a little puddle on the floor because he fell in love with somebody who was sure that when they opened their eyes would be absolutely disgusted by what they saw. And that was the moment where everything about Beast came together.
The question, but you know, looking back at Xmen the animated series, I feel like it was the first time a lot of kids got to experience and like understand like prejudice and equality and inequity and all of these big themes, but it was presented in a way that kids could understand it, kind of apply it to their own lives and then grow up with it. What was it about this show? Like, how were you able to create something like that? Was there ever any feedback that you got back from the network? You know, because I feel like the show really was something so special because of those themes.
Well, one of the things that I have to give praise to is the writing staff. I mean, and in that when we began working on the show, we didn't want to write down to kids, we wanted to write up to kids. But we wanted to include those things, but do it as subtext, because we wanted to have adventures at an early age. You're going to see robots and explosions, laser beams. A lot of the stuff that we have would just go right over your head. But when you watch it the second time, you're going, oh crap, they're talking about this, they're talking about that. They're talking about things that kids at that age could relate to. And one of the important things that myself and the writers wanted to do was to impart to kids some sort of cognitive thinking that would help them through crisis in their own lives. But just to give people things like, I think it was Jubilee's line where she says something like, why do people hate us? People hate what they don't understand. That little line meant a lot for that young age. And they could at least take that thought with them, that it gave them something to try and understand the world at that age. I'm talking about when you're like between 7 and 12 years old, not as this age. But yeah, we deliberately tried to do that, and they gave us the freedom. This was part of the lightning in a bottle situation we had back in the 90s, is that we had the writers who wanted to elevate the writing, and we also had what you would call the broadcast standards person, basically censor. She didn't come from typical Saturday morning. She actually came from live action. And so because of that, she was open to us pushing the envelope for Saturday morning as to what would be good and entertaining for that audience. And so that's how we got Nightcrawler talking about God and faith and other episodes like that, like Rogue, abandoned and being kicked out by her father. She's out there alone by herself. We got to touch on those themes, and it's because we had we got extremely lucky in having good writers who could write good character dramas, and we had a censor person who was on our side, and it all just came together, especially with the voice comment, but the writing is really where it came together to make it really, really work, make it memorable, that you guys remember all the lines probably on the shows.
Well, we are almost out of time, but I want to end on a fun question for each of you. If you could have, I guess the question would be, would you want to have your character's superpower, or would you want to steal the power from somebody else on the stage? And then Larry, for you, you have an entire group of them. What power do you want to have? We'll start here with, you want to go first, and then we can pass back to, okay, Allison, you want to go first?
I wouldn't trade a sword for anything.
Good answer.
I'm not usually the life that I would want to be, but some of it is because I'm a child of the Caribbean. I grew up in Barbados, and we're a tiny little dot in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. And every hurricane season, it was the same thing. We locked down. You can feel it. It's all over the island. All the PSAs are going out. It's June 1st to sometime in November. It's hurricane season, and you get ready. And there were so many times that Barbados was almost hit, and we got away with it. But as a little kid, that's all that you can remember is the tension in the house, and your father putting up the things and blocking out the windows, and you're getting the batteries, and you're getting the lamps, and so this feeling that you were at the mercy of the elements, to go from that to being the mistress of the elements, I'm good.
Yeah.
I guess for me, if I had a power, I'd love to be Colossus so I could get rid of this.
Good.
Be a normal sized person. There you go.
Chris?
I'm good with my power. Actually, both characters is kind of nice. I'll take them both. I just feel like my power is contribute. That might be something that is all you can hope for in this world. Be able to contribute with your own special power. Right now, with the way things are going between that country south of us right now, I think we all need to collectively use our superpowers. Next,
Well, I like being a shapeshifter. Gives me more opportunities to do whatever I want with whomever I want.
Oh!
And the outcome, well, you'll have to wait and see.
Ooh.
Al, do you want Wolverine's powers or do you want to steal somebody else's?
I think I'm doing really well in the blue zone.
I'd like to figure out whatever the hell it is that Cyclops has that she prefers him over me. That's the power I would want so I could have changed forever.
Cedric?
Well, I think, I just have a very simple power of having the answer for everything. And I kind of enjoyed that. It's kind of and being able to foresee and all of these things that, try as I might, I can't seem to replicate for myself. I have to look for an Xmen script to be able to, yeah, so, wow.
Jordan, do you want to read the piece?
Well, I'm kind of torn between being able to get invisible and flying. Either one of those would be kind of neat.
Well, let's put our hands together one more time. Thank you all so much.
Thanks, man.
On the show floor, so everybody can come find you. What exhibit, booth number is it? Do you know off the top of your head?
What's your booth number?
Your booth number?
3703, I think.
3703? Yes. Look at the app, but 3703. Go see these folks this weekend.
I'm in the south building, near the back, against the wall. That's where you'll find my big sign. That's where.
And come back on Sunday, we have an Xmen 97 panel.